Good evening. The Rio Rancho Public Schools Board of Education meeting for Monday, August 8th, 2022 is now called to order. If all would arise for the Pledge of Allegiance, Jessica Tyler will start us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Board Member Tyler. Kim, can you take a roll call for us?
Yes, I can. President Galbraith.
Present.
Vice President Morgan.
Present.
Secretary Scott.
Present.
Board Member Tripp.
Present.
And Board Member Tyler.
Present.
You have a quorum, 5-0.
All right, thank you so much, Kim. I would like to welcome everyone to our board meeting tonight. There's some wonderful people in the room I'm excited to talk to here pretty soon. But it's just, I know I say this enough, but it's just really nice to be able to have everyone in person once again and to see so many wonderful people. So tonight we'll start off our meeting. We're second day of school, I guess, second day of school. But we'll start off our meeting with some introductory comments by our Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Psfa Cleveland.
Good evening, everyone. It's great to have you with us this evening. Okay, the Finance Committee of the Board met prior to the regular business meeting, primarily to review revenues and expenditures. We have held last week 3 convocation sessions for all of our district employees by levels. We had 1 session for elementary, 1 for middle, and 1 for our high schools. It was great to see all of the Rio Rancho Public School staff, and it was held at the concert hall at Cleveland last week. It's still really much too early to be able to have any reliable enrollment numbers. We will begin the process of dropping students who have not shown up this week, and hopefully by the next board meeting, we will have some numbers for you to look at in terms of overall enrollment. Our secondary students began classes last Friday, following a jumpstart day on Thursday for all of our incoming 6th and 9th grade students. We had a lot of really positive responses on the jumpstart, and so really appreciate everybody who came in and worked that. It certainly makes it easier for 6th and 9th graders as they're in a new school, a new environment, to have that one-day head start. There, as always, there were some major challenges with traffic on the first days of school. That happens every year. We had less of them, though, this year than we've had in the past. And we're still kind of dealing with that kind of push and pull. A lot of parents want to be with their kids on those first days of school, understand that. Some are waiting to see how we're doing in transportation before they decide whether their children are going to ride the bus or not. And it's just, there's always more cars to go through on those first couple of days of school. But we certainly were aware of that and working on trying to resolve that issue. We want to very much thank the Rio Rancho Police Department, who came out to help at several of the sites with some of the issues that the campuses were facing. We really appreciate their help and support to move some of that traffic along. And so the overall tone, I think, for the start of school this year has been very positive. But as always the case, there's always some issues to resolve, and we're working on those, and hopefully we'll get them resolved very soon. We have a commendation this evening. Janice Chenault will be the one to provide the comments on the recognition of Cheryl. Sorry, Cheryl. It's been a long day for me too. Cheryl Clark, who's the principal at Ernie Stapleton Elementary School. She was recognized as at the NIMSL conference this summer in late July as the New Mexico Elementary Distinguished Principal of the Year. It was a very nice event there, and it's a wonderful honor to receive this recognition. And it is provided by the National Association of the Elementary School Principals, which is a national organization. But again, congratulations to Cheryl for representing her school and the district in such a positive way. And Janice Chenault will share some additional information with you when we get to that agenda item. We have some reports this evening. We have 2. The first report will be presented by Chief Operations Officer Mike Baker and Executive Director of Finance David Vigil and Eric Harrigan with RBC Capital Markets. Mr. Harrigan is a financial advisor to the district, worked with us for quite some time. We're really pleased to have him with us this evening. The presentation will provide an update for the board on financing of our bonds. The second one will be an update that you requested on staffing for vacant positions in the district. This report will be provided by our Executive Director of Human Resources, Mike Chavez. I would say just a couple of things, and he'll give you more data. The district is in a much better shape than it's been the last several years for staffing. And of course, COVID was the hardest, but we've had several difficult years prior to COVID. So it's really wonderful to see the gains that have been made. Certainly the increased compensation and the reduction of COVID restrictions has also helped to expand the applicant pool. But I think it's wonderful to have more applicants. But what we're really pleased with is their level of experience and their qualifications are really good. And so we have a great applicant pool this year, and we certainly welcome all of our new employees to the district. We will have a presentation on the master plan. The proposed master plan for facilities will be presented by Mike Baker and also Executive Director of Facilities, Melanie Archibald. There were concerns that were raised by the board related to an earlier vision, and we hope that some of those issues have been addressed. This plan is required by the state, and the state helps with some of the financial costs of the project. I do want to stress the plan is primarily driven by square footage alone. It does not take into account a lot of other key variables that can certainly impact facilities such as neighborhoods, feeder schools, equity issues, and so forth. So it's good information, but it doesn't cover all of the things that are related to school facilities. And then we will have an opportunity for the board to consider a memo of understanding with the Boys and Girls Club. If you will remember, we talked to you about this agreement several months ago when we were first trying to work it out. The agenda item will be presented by Secondary School Improvement Officer Renee Saucedo. And it's really a wonderful opportunity for us to be able to provide after-school activities for middle school students at Mountain View, Lincoln, and Eagle Ridge for this coming school year. Rio Rancho Middle, as you know, is undergoing a major renovation and simply we couldn't make this program feasible for them this year. But hopefully funding will be available for Rio Rancho Middle School next year. Just saying, just in passing, the students will be moving around all year long. It's going to be quite an undertaking, and just adding one more thing to the plate was just more than the school really felt it could handle. We certainly have needed more activities at the middle school level for a long time. And so we thank the Boys and Girls Club for reaching out to provide this assistance and support. And they reached out to us. They've done this at Albuquerque and some other places. They wanted to provide it for the students here in Rio Rancho. The person that was sharing it from the Boys and Girls Club works here. She works for HP. And several of the other businesses, including HP, have been involved in helping support this initiative. So we're looking forward to having those activities for students at a really critical age who may need something to do that's fun and healthy and just a good place to be at the end of the school day. We don't have a lot on COVID. Information was sent out to all of our families regarding the New Mexico Public Education Department requirements related to COVID. We were really hoping there would not be a toolkit this year. We kept asking, no toolkit, but we got a toolkit again. And so we're working through it. And but one of the biggest issues is still doing the contact tracing and the test to stay monitoring for positive cases. And I just can't tell you, it's a tremendous amount of work. And we are hoping, maybe it's hopeful thinking, that the state may loosen some of these restrictions. What is really interesting is nobody else is being asked to do it. the Department of Health, hospitals, no one else is being asked to do what we're being asked to do. So we're really hoping the state will loosen those restrictions so that we can spend more of our time on teaching and learning rather than on monitoring COVID. We know there still has to be some, but we think people pretty much now know the drill and know that when you're sick, you stay home, and they know you go get tested. I think by now most families are certainly very well informed on what needs to be done. As I said, we are anticipating some modifications based on new CDC guidelines, and we hope that that comes to the district sooner than later. And as soon as those changes, we receive them, we will pass them on to all of our students and parents and staff once we have that information. And that's all I have. Are there any questions?
Any questions from the board? We're good. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Cleveland. Thank you very much. All right. For our next item, we'll approve the prioritized agenda and proposed time allocations. Any changes that need to take place?
Board Member Tyler, I'll make a motion to approve the prioritized agenda and proposed time allocations.
Board Member Jeff Morgan, a second.
Okay. We have a motion by Jessica Tyler and a second by Jeff Morgan. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion carries 5-0. All right. We'll now move to our public comment. Just to get us started on our public comment, we have a couple that came in through our form, so I'm going to do those, and then we have one here in the boardroom that will be giving public comment. So for our public comment that came in through our internet form, our first one was from Wesley Myers, and he was writing to express his concerns about the transportation policy being not good for his family and concerns just with those changes. Our other public comment is from David Dooling, also concerned about our transportation. Thursday was hoping for a bus for his daughter for the Jumpstart Day and did not have one for Cleveland. So those are two public comments. For those who'd like to give public comment, you are welcome to do so. You can go to our board page, and there's a form there that you can fill out, and we welcome those public comments coming in through that. We also welcome our public comment that comes into the boardroom. And so we do have one public comment here. So for our public comment, this person should know our public comment rules very, very well. We have for our first one is Ramon Montano, if he wants to come on up. So you will have 3 minutes to give your public comment, and I'll let you
Good
go.
evening, Madam President, Vice President, Secretary, members of the board, Dr. Cleveland, everyone here. I came to complain about Bruce Carver because he still owes me lunch from like 3 years ago. No, joking aside, it's good to be here. And I'm very proud to say that my daughter was selected to join Shining Stars Preschool. So we're now the family of Shining Stars Preschool, which you have no clue. That's a huge honor, and what an undertaking it was. You know, Mike, his team, Melanie, Dr. Cleveland, to get that school where it was, and most of all the voters of Rio Rancho supporting our bond election. With today, first day, and we had the meet and greet initially. I just came to see if we could, the schools can meet with Mayor Hall and the city of Rio Rancho and I know that you guys probably already doing this, but the traffic there is really difficult. And the ones I really feel sorry for is our buses having to navigate the process in and out. Today, there's a lot of traffic, of course. It's new days. Parents want to be there and scared dropping off their little ones for the first day. And parents were really respectful, letting everybody in and out, and some cutting through the backside where there's no roads to try to get out of there sooner. But overall, I just encourage to look at that avenue and encourage the city to come to the table as well to find an avenue for that intersection along Broadmoor and Adelia. Because that intersection does back up. Now people are starting to cut through the residential areas and make their own roads as well. I understand why, frustration, but hopefully that there can be some communication, hopefully a future project that the city can fix that situation there where Shining Stars is now. But anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for
And
coming.
if you can mandate Bruce Carver to take me to lunch, I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you for coming in. All right, moving on from our public comment, we will go to commendations. So our first and only commendation for tonight is a recognition of Cheryl Clark, our principal at Ernest Stapleton Elementary School. And Janice Chenault, our elementary school improvement officer, will present this.
So, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Cleveland, I would like to introduce you, if you don't know, to Cheryl Clark. She's a principal of Ernest Stapleton Elementary. And earlier this year, she called me and told me she received a phone call and she thought it was a joke, so she ignored it a couple of times. And then finally, they emailed her, and she was has been recognized as the for the National Association of Elementary School Principals, the Elementary Principal of the Year, Distinguished Principal of the Year. So she went through a very lengthy application process, and is going to be representing our district in Washington, D.C. later this year, and our state. That's right, the only one in our state. So a little bit about Cheryl. She started out as a third grade, fourth grade teacher, then quickly moved into leadership from there, became an ed tech at Rancho Elementary. Learned tonight she started as a parent volunteer in Leslie's class, moved up from ed tech to AP. We started at about the same time, and has been the principal at Stapleton for several years. Gosh, has it been 8? Is this 8?
Year 7.
Year 7. As you can see, she has her leadership team here with her, and I'm very proud of her. You know, some of the things that I see in Cheryl and working with her closely is her kindness and her compassion, not only for her staff, but for her students. If you walk the halls of Stapleton, she's a little bit of a rock star with the kids. They love her dearly. Her staff loves her and appreciates her. You might see her in the lunchroom cleaning up after lunch with her broom and sweeping up after the kids, or you'll see her in the classroom or helping out with students, and she's everywhere. Probably her biggest strength that she provides or brings to Stapleton is her community engagement. So when we were able to have families back last year, she's the first one welcoming them in. Long hours, early morning, late hours, but that is the thing she loves the most. And if you know Cheryl, you know why that is. So I'm just presenting her to you. We're so proud of her and excited for her. And Cheryl Clark.
I really don't want to talk.
They might talk first.
Thank you. I do want to thank my village back here because you can't do anything without them. So, everybody.
Bring up those flowers. Bring them up. Those are
Thank you.
beautiful. Those are beautiful. Cheryl, is there anything else that you want to say? I'm going to go through the board.
Well, there's probably lots of things I could say, but I'm not very good at that. No, I'm just appreciative for the opportunities. Like I said, like Jana said, when I started this, I was volunteering in a classroom, started subbing, went back, got my teaching, jumped in, and I've been lucky to be supported all the way. So
Yes. Thank you.
it's awesome, but yeah, I will say it's humbling because I know that there's a lot of people out there that are working really, really hard. So it's nice to be honored, but I know lots of people deserve it too. So
She's a good company.
Oh, I love it.
So-
Love it. Yeah, thank you. Dr. Cleveland, do you want to say anything?
Well,
before we go to the board?
but she is
Yeah.
a wonderful, wonderful person, a great asset to our district. And, you know, she was so deserving of this recognition. And you're right, the competition for Elementary Principal of the Year in New Mexico is fierce. It really is a very strong field, and people take it pretty seriously. So we were so proud when it was Rio Rancho, and we were doubly proud when it was you. So again, congratulations, and thanks for all you do every day for the staff and students and families in your school.
Yeah, thank you. And then Gary Tripp, you want to say anything?
I have a lot to say about Cheryl, but
only the
But,
nice stuff, please.
when we came in and I saw the agenda, Cheryl, I did text Deland Hayden. Deland Hayden was one of those teachers that Cheryl took under her wings, and she happens to be my daughter. So she taught at under Cheryl, and she says, "Oh, Dad, that's so exciting! Wow, tell her congratulations and give her a hug for me. Thank you so much for everything she did for me." So just want to say thank you.
That's awesome.
You have a lot of admirers out there. Did a great job.
Jeff Morgan?
I just want to say thanks. Like the fact that you lead by example. I can't tell you how important that is. and being involved in the community. Two big things. So thank you so much.
Jessica Tyler.
Just echo what the rest of the board said. Congratulations. Be very proud. It's a huge distinguished award. And so be very proud of yourself and take the time to soak it in. And your humility shows probably one of the main reasons why you were chosen for it. So keep up the good work.
Noreen Scott.
Thank you for all your efforts. We really appreciate it. It's leadership like yours that keeps our school district on top. My son went to Stapleton, and so I know what a great job you've done. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I just want to say thank you too. I would have known that wasn't a joke because you're fantastic. So thank you. You've been the principal for all of my children, and the kids know Principal Clark at the school. They know her and they love her. And so I just want to say thank you for all you do as a parent too, who knows all the hard work that you've put in there. So thank you so much for everything. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Like I said, I'm proud to be part of this district and have this opportunity to go to Washington and stand up in front of a lot of people.
It's gonna be.
Super excited, but thank you.
Thank you. That's wonderful. All right, moving into our reports, we will go to our first report is a bonds plan of finance update. We have Michael Baker, our Chief Operations Officer, David Vigil, our Executive Director of Finance, and Eric Harrigan from RBC Capital Markets here to present to us.
Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Cleveland, thank you for giving us the opportunity. Tonight, we are going to just do a presentation regarding our bond program, current market conditions and so forth. And so on that note, I'd like to introduce Eric Harrigan. He's the managing partner of RBC Capital Markets.
Great. Thank you very much. Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, and Superintendent Cleveland. Eric Harrigan with RBC Capital Markets. So it's that time of year again as we get ready and prep for the district's bond sale of voter authorized bonds. So I think the presentation is being pulled up here. But as that's getting pulled up, just a couple of things I'd like to note is that the district has continued to see really good growth in its tax base. And that has been for a couple of reasons. One, for reassessment of existing property, home values continue to remain very, very robust, as well as the addition of new home values. So if we go to the next slide, on the next slide, you'll see that the assessed valuation for the district has grown a little over 6%. This was followed by over 7% last year. And so on average, over the last 5 years, you've seen your growth about 5.5%. And this is kind of similar to what we were seeing, pre 2000 and 2010. We do expect to see that growth will continue at least for a couple more years. Just really, there's very, very little supply out there, which is really creating the demand issue that we're seeing. And we're going to talk a little bit about your next bond election. All of this growth is very positive as it helps grow your GEO bond program. Next slide. So the district has had a very stable debt service tax rate. Right around $8.50. This will continue to maintain the issuance of these bonds that we're going to be talking about. Will continue to maintain that historical debt service tax rate. And the district has other tax rates out, that it has, such as an operating SB9. And you can kind of see the chart. As you can see, your tax rate for everything across the board has remained very, very stable. Next slide. So the district has a little over 100 million of outstanding general obligation bonds. As you may recall, from time to time, we do look to refinance and try to lower the district's outstanding GEO bonds if we can. Currently, because rates have went up quite a bit. Currently there are no outstanding bonds that can be refunded to generate present value savings to the district or to lower your interest rate. And so for this upcoming sale, all we will be doing is selling those voter authorized bonds. Your debt service pays off very rapidly, as you can see. That's a big rating positive, and that decline in debt service allows the district to issue bonds annually, layer in those new bonds, and the faster that you can retire your debt, the more capacity that you create. And so the faster your tax base grows, the faster you're able to retire your debt. So if we go to the next slide. So as we all know, when voters authorized the last series of bonds, it was in the amount of 60 million to be sold over 4 years. We've sold 30 million of that, with the remaining 30 to be sold this year and next year. But when we started looking at what your capacity is, instead of 60 million, we're actually looking at closer to 70 million. We were estimating between 65 to 70. Based upon the growth that we've seen this year, we think that number is actually going to be closer to 70 million when we go to voters in November of 2023. And again, that will just continue the existing program that the district has in place. It'll continue to maintain that same tax rate that the district has had for many, many years. The district is about 62% bonded to capacity. All school districts in the state of New Mexico, their geo-bonding capacity is determined at 6% of your assessed value. So again, as your tax base grows, so does your total bonding capacity as well. Next slide. So from a timing standpoint, we would be back in front of you later this month to actually authorize the sale of the bonds. The bonds would be sold at a public competitive sale. And that type of sale, firms it's effectively what is done is that you announce the sale. Investment banking firms from around the country get the opportunity to bid on the district's bonds, and the lowest bidder on that day is awarded the sale of the bonds. That's a very competitive, open process, and the district knows that you receive the lowest interest rate on that day that you sold the bonds. So there's a couple of slides on the market, and I'm going to provide a high level sort of overview. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but I think as we've all seen, inflation has sort of been the word of 2022. The Federal Reserve is very concerned about it, and they have raised the overnight lending rate several times. The last 2 times they've raised the overnight lending rate 75 basis points, really as a way of trying to get inflation under control. They're very concerned about it. And because of that, since January, we have seen a pretty significant rise in interest rates. Last year, when the district sold its bonds, the interest rate was around 1%. This year, it's going to be closer to 3%, just where interest rates have gone. And is expected that the Federal Reserve will continue to raise interest rates, trying to get inflation under control. And whether they will or not, it's very difficult to tell. But that's one of the reasons that the district has its cycling bond program. You sell every year. Sometimes you sell bonds in slightly higher interest rate environment. Other years you sell in a lower interest rate environment. But if you could skip a couple of slides. Next slide, please. One more. This is really the slide that I wanted to kind of show you. So this is the AAA MMD curve for the 10, 20, and 30 year. And what the AAA MMD is that's really the yield curve on which all municipal bonds are priced. And you can see since January, we've seen a pretty significant rise in those rates. However, because of some concern surrounding the possibility of the U.S., entering into a recession, or, there's potential, recessionary pressures out there, rates actually have come down since their peak a couple of months ago. So, even though rates are higher, when you actually look back over the last 10 years, rates are still very, very attractive from where they have been. And, with this drop in interest rates, I mean, I do think that the district will be hitting the market at a pretty good time. And we feel that the district will get a very competitive interest rate. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions. And again, we'll be back in a couple of weeks when the board goes to actually adopt the authorizing resolution as well.
All right, thank you. Dr. Cleveland, do you want to say anything before we go into questions? Go to questions. Okay, Gary Tripp.
Not a question, just a comment. I know we're looking at about 70 million in November of 2023. And I guess it is a question, Dr. Cleveland, just for the public to know, how much does an elementary school cost? How much does a middle school cost? And how much does a high school cost? And, you hear the 70 million, you think that's a great amount of money, and it is. But boy, we don't have a whole lot to work with for all the needs we have. So kind of my question was some of those needs and what are those costs? I mean, I know they're outstanding.
Mike Baker has that number. Mike, the cost of the estimate of the facility needs that we have in the district, you have that. I know you have that number. You've shared it with us, but I'm not sure I could give it exactly.
Melanie will go over that in more detail. If I recall, over the next 5 years, the master plan calls for get our facilities up to an A rating, I believe is $380 million.
Thank you.
And that does not include new facilities.
So it was to get to an A rating, $380 million, right? I'm just saying that on the microphone so people hear what you answered.
We built a high school 10 years ago, and that's about half of the cost of that high school.
Jeff Morgan. Okay. All right. Thanks. Jessica Tyler. Nope. Noreen Scott.
No questions.
No questions. I don't have any questions either. Dr. Cleveland, do you have anything else you want to? Okay. I think we're good on questions for the evening.
Thank you very
So
much.
thank you for coming out. We appreciate you coming out.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay. Our next report is a Human Resources Department report on staff and staffing update. Mike Chavez, our Executive Director of Human Resources, will be presenting.
Good evening, Madam President, Dr. Cleveland, members of the board. I want to start by just saying we're actually very excited this year. We, as a team, really made a commitment last year amongst ourselves that we were very determined that this next year would be something different for us because we were experiencing a little frustration, just like everybody over the last couple of years. But even before COVID came, as Dr. Cleveland mentioned, we were seeing quite a downturn in the number of teachers that we were able to hire in the district, just among other staff that we were seeing a decline in as well, but mostly in teachers. And so we were very excited when it was announced that the legislature was looking at an increase in salary. That really gave us some hope. And I will tell you that some of the things I'm going to talk about as far as recruiting, we actually had delved into well before the legislature made its decisions, because we, as I said, as a department, we were very determined that this year was going to be different for our students. That we were, and Dr. Cleveland and I have been talking about this for quite some time. We've been using the term that we wanted a highly qualified teacher in every classroom. So with that being said, I'm going to jump right in and I'm going to go to the next slide and I'm going to give you some numbers. And I'm going to tell you that even since Friday, some of these numbers have actually improved. I will tell you that bus drivers, we have no vacancies right now in bus drivers, none. As a matter of fact, we are 5 over. We working with Mike Baker, Lynn Carl was approved to overhire bus drivers just in case. We had somebody that decided to resign, and we'll talk about late resignations here in a minute. But we are 5 over. Several so the way that bus drivers work, just to explain to you, when Lynn Carl hires a bus driver, they go directly into a trainee program. Even if they have a CDL license, they still have to go through some training with Rio Rancho Public Schools in order to be familiar with all the rules and regulations and such. It's obviously shorter if they already have the license. She has moved a huge number of drivers through the trainee program already this summer in order to get them up and running and on the road. So we still have a few people in training, but it is looking really good, folks. Custodial, you'll see that we have 4 vacancies. As of this week, that should be 0. I know that we had interviews going on last week, and between Daniel and Chris and Darian, they were to be putting in the hiring paperwork this week to fill the rest of those vacancies. We had a counselor position still open, and I'll actually have to check with Sherry to see where we're at with that. But I will tell you the really good news. We are continually getting applications every day. And that is something that was not happening previously. And it was extremely frustrating because I'd come in, we clear our applications every day, 2 to 3 times a day. And I would come in and I'd say, where are we at? What kind of applications are we getting? None. We were just getting no applications. And now, you know, Jennifer Spear comes to me and she says, we got a whole bunch of, you know, this kind of application, that kind of application. So it's actually pretty exciting. General ed teachers, we're actually down to 5 openings district-wide. We just hired another CTE auto mechanic from one of our custodial foremen actually moved into that position. So we're actually down to only 5 general education openings district-wide. We have approximately 7 special ed teachers. I believe we may have picked another one up today. And we have 2 special ed cluster teachers. So in the district, we have a number of programs called cluster programs, which are very small group, very, very specialized programs. But I will tell you that 2 of those programs are being looked at very carefully, one at Mountain View and one at Maggie Cordova. And both of those programs have been held off just a little bit, and they're looking very hard at finding just the right person for each of those programs right now. So that's what's actually holding those programs open. Health assistants, we have 2. And then we come to the area where we're actually struggling a little bit to find people. And in just a minute, we're going to talk about what we're doing about that. But like I said, we are feeling very good about where we're at. And the good news is we are continuing to get applications. We are still having people come into our district saying, we'd really like to work for Rio Rancho Public Schools. And the principals continue to hire. So even today, we were still receiving paperwork to hire teachers. Next slide, please. What I really want to focus on this evening, if I could, for just a couple of minutes, are what our recruiting efforts have been. And I'm going to talk about a couple of things, and then in a minute, I'm going to invite Beth Pendergrass to come up because we have had an amazing partnership with the communications department this year, and it has been incredibly successful. We continue to do the job fairs that we've spoken to you about before. We open those up to applicants every Wednesday evening at 5 o'clock, the first Wednesday of every month, at 5 o'clock. And we continue to have quite a number of people turn out. As a matter of fact, this last Wednesday, we had a job fair and we had a number of teachers show up interested in positions and coming to ask questions about alternative licensure, about how they go about getting a position, asking for help applying for positions. We have a continued very strong Facebook presence, and Beth can talk a little bit more about that. Beth's department has put together an RRPS recruitment video and has also added LinkedIn to the RRPS portfolio. One of the things that we're very proud of and is going to make an immense difference next year is our residency program. And you've heard us talk about it a couple of times, but the residency program, the nice thing about it is it's going to give us a very large number of teachers already built in to the system when we start school next year, or when we actually start hiring next year. We're going to start in a surplus rather than at a deficit. We also have our teacher intern program, which has been very successful. We have placed almost all of our teacher interns over the last couple of years into regular classroom positions. And then finally, we're going to talk to you tonight a little bit about something called the Device ID program, which is an advertising program that we've been using. And we have had quite a number of applicants and hires from out of state this year. And I think it's in large part due to the advertising we've done. Next slide, please. So let's talk for a minute about our teacher residency program. Right now we have 20 UNM residents. We have 4 New Mexico Highland residents and 2 Eastern New Mexico residents, which gives us 26 teachers. As long as they're all successful, we'll start with 26 teachers that we can immediately place in classrooms as teachers of record when we start the school year. So if you think about that, if we have about 12 openings right now, we're going to start with 26 teachers to place before we even start recruiting for regular openings. So they range anywhere from elementary to high school. We have them at every level, elementary, mid, and high. And we have residents both in general ed and special education. Next slide, please. We, as I've said, we've continued our job fairs. We have them monthly, first Wednesday of every month. We recruit for all positions at the job fairs, and we get people coming in to see us about all positions. And we give assistance. That's the nice thing. We actually purchased a cart full of Chromebooks. We bring those Chromebooks to every job fair. We set them up in the training rooms. And when somebody comes in, they can come in and they can sit down and they can fill out their application right there. And we usually have SFE, we have Kelly Services, we have custodial people, we have our bus department. And this last time we actually had some principals on site, and a lot of people sit down and they get a job interview right there on site. Next slide, please. And then I'm going to invite Beth up right now because we're going to talk a little bit about some advertising that we've done. And one of the things that we did, and she's going to be able to explain it much better than I can, but it's a pretty neat thing. Beth called me one day and she said, hey, we have this opportunity to work with KRQE. And it's Nexstar, right? Yeah, Nexstar Advertising. And I said, that's fantastic, because we had already been working together through a lot of Facebook advertising, and we'd had a lot of success. And so we sat down and we listened to the presentation, and we were very excited. And over the last several months, we've been targeting people from out of state. And I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a billboard out on Paseo that's trying to recruit people over to Dallas to become teachers. And we think that's because of us, because we've been targeting Texas to try to get their teachers to come here. One of the things we're switching to, and then I'm going to turn this over to Beth, is we are now targeting EAs very specifically. We've transitioned the advertising from teachers to EAs, because you saw that we have quite a few EA openings still, and they're very, very important in our schools. So we are very much targeting very directly a lot of our advertising towards EAs so that we can let them know it's a very well-paid position. It does provide benefits. It's the same hours as a lot of their children go to school. And there are some benefits to that position. So I'm going to let Beth, if you'll go to the next slide, please. I'm going to let her talk a little bit about what device ID is. Thank you, Beth.
You're welcome. I won't spend a lot of time. So we launched the device ID campaign in May through Nexstar, which is the parent company for KRQE, their advertising portion. So digital ID is a little different from just targeting someone's phone. Digital ID uses IP address and will target all the devices in a house. So anything that has an app on it or goes to the website or anything, it targets every single device within that person's home. And it also targets the audience that we're looking for. So we can target based on keywords, based on what websites they're going to, based on their age, based on, if they're looking up education, if they've ever used the word teacher, all of that we can base. It's very targeted. And so it uses thousands and thousands of apps and websites, and it sends out these ads. Next slide, please. Next slide. So anyway, so we in May, we had 130,000, almost 131,000 impressions, 134 clicks, which means they're going directly to our website. The top geos were in Phoenix and Houston, that we were seeing a lot of hits. Click-through rate, which is a really strong click-through rate. And when you see that, it doesn't look like a strong click-through rate, but it's a really actually excellent click-through rate. In June, you can see what our impressions were. So when I'm talking about apps and websites, we're talking about everything, all your news websites, Hulu, Amazon, travel websites, TripAdvisor, Macy's, Nordstrom. I mean, you name it, they're hitting everything. So these ads are popping up for these individuals that we're targeting. And so we've been really pleased with what we've seen. We targeted mainly Texas, Arizona, and Colorado. With our EA campaign, we're bringing it back local because we don't anticipate that a lot of EAs would want to move to another state to work as an EA. Next slide. And then the same with Facebook. So we wanted to kind of overlap between doing the digital ID as well as targeting through Facebook. And you can purchase ads as well through Facebook that you can really target in on specific audiences. And so we did the same with Facebook, targeting Texas, Arizona, and Colorado. And you can see what our reach was there and our clicks through. So we feel like both campaigns have been highly successful. And so we're going to continue to do work around that as we see the need.
So I just want to conclude by saying, first of all, thank you to Beth and her team, because it's been a fantastic partnership. And I want to really thank my team because they truly do care very, very deeply about getting qualified staff into those classrooms in front of those children. And I just want to say that we are absolutely committed to continuing working towards fulfilling that goal. And I'd stand for questions.
Yes, I have one question for Beth. Could we look at geofencing each of our elementary schools? I'm assuming that's where our teacher aides lack. If we could do that for each one, maybe there'd be 2 or 3 parents that would pop up from that.
That's a great idea. We've used geofencing in the past through bond campaigns, but I've not considered it, but it's certainly something we could look into. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
That's a great idea. Other questions? Gary Tripp?
Excellent report. Thank you. This is a lot of wonderful news starting the school year. Mike, I just had one it's not a question, it's just a food for thought because I don't know. But the teacher residency programs, do we have something lined up or connected with CNM as we get down the road and open CTE type of programs? I would think teachers will come from there, but I just wondered if we had a teacher residency contract with CNM.
We actually limited it. We started with just UNM this year. And it was actually NMHU reached out to us and said, listen, we have people that really, really want to complete the residency in your district. So I agreed to take some more people on a limited basis. And then I had Bobby from ENMU, she called and she said, it's kind of the same thing. She said, I have 2 people who desperately want to be in your district to be residents. So we kind of purposefully, because this was the first year we were doing it, And I'm working with Todd Resch in CNI, and he's kind of spearheaded the UNM program. And I promised him that I would take on anything else that came in besides UNM because he couldn't take on anything else. And so, no, I haven't worked with CNM yet. I do work very closely with CNM on our alternative teacher licensure. And I have a very good relationship with them on that. And I will tell you, very interestingly, CNM got to the point where they have about 45 people on a waiting list for alternative licensure right now. CES, their LEAP program, they are full. New Mexico Highlands is their alternative program. My understanding is they're full. We have had to actually expand our horizons a little bit. We're actually working with a new college up in Espanola, northern New Mexico Community College, to try to continue to help the people we're hiring find an alternative licensure program. But CNM is actually on our radar to talk to eventually about the residency program. So,
Thank you.
Okay. Jeff Morgan,
No questions. Thank you for the information.
thank you.
Jessica Tyler, Noreen.
Mike, thank you very much. I was very excited to hear the partnership between departments. That's really critical. And it's wonderful to have Beth's great expertise in it. Thank
Oh,
you.
yeah, absolutely.
I do have a quick question. I mean, I remember this being brought up by previous board member, but we talked about those EAs. Is there a way to take some of like our high school seniors who are interested in education and have them, do some sort of internship through the schools and help in those places, at least for, a couple class periods or something? Is that something that would be good, or
Well, we
way
actually
too
had a
many?
small program this last year through the CTE
Mhm.
department where we had some students who were going into the elementaries. The CTE department got a grant, and those students that were actually getting paid to go in, and so it was kind of encouraging them, and it was students who were interested in becoming educators.
Mhm.
And so my department helped set them up. They had to actually put in an application so they could kind of learn the whole process of applying for a job, getting onboarded as an employee, and earning a small wage. So we actually have had that in place a little bit. And that was a grant, like I said, through the CTE department.
That's good. That's wonderful to hear. Thank you.
Yeah.
This is so wonderful to hear. I just want to say thank you for all of your hard work. It's a great report. Dr. Cleveland, do you want to add to?
Yeah, just comment on a couple of things. Educational assistants are licensed and there are requirements. And so they have to have a 2-year degree, I believe. But certainly there are other programs and we can use students in internships and that kind of thing. But it is a licensed position, a 2-year degree, I believe now.
Well, actually, and not to contradict you, but they can.
If I'm wrong, probably.
No, that's okay. There's 2 ways that they can go about getting their license. So you are correct. If they have degree and they have 42 hours, they get the license that way. Or we have a test actually that they can take and that they can pass. Not an easy test. And so, people, they have to study and they have to do, they have to work at it. But there is a test. So anybody who has a high school diploma and is still interested in being an EA, they can do that. But we do require a level 3 in our district. We require a level 3 EA license, which does require either passage of the test or at least 42 hours of college credit. Yes.
Thank you for clearing that up. There's a couple of things. We also have another program that we work with, and I don't know much about it, but Jerry Reeder does, and that is LEAP. We have another program that helps us move people into special ed. I laughed when I saw the hits of Phoenix and Houston because they're so much hotter than here. They're just so hot. So no wonder we got those clicks. It's been terrible. Maybe not as many from Denver, I gather, but certainly Phoenix and Houston. The last year, just to, reminder of the board, we had 40 vacancies in general ed. When we started the year last year, 40 classrooms were not filled in regular ed and a significant number in special ed. So, I really want to thank the HR department. They really have not missed a beat from the day the summer began, just nonstop trying to get people in and interview them and all of that. And they have just not missed a beat, and it has been a heavy load. It takes a lot to hire this many people. It's not an easy job. And so I want to thank them for that. I also want to thank our principals, because many of them came in the summer when they were off and still were interviewing people and trying to get their schools completely staffed. And so principals, assistant principals also put in a lot of extra time and effort. It just kind of goes to the point, and I've had a couple of calls. I've had one from LFC, one from LASC, about did the compensation package make a difference? It made all the difference in the world.
Absolutely.
And so we thank the legislature and we thank the governor for working to get this compensation package passed. We had in New Mexico more people with teaching licenses that were not teaching than were. So it wasn't that there was a lack of people. There was a lack of people willing to do the job for that compensation package. And so, again, we just really thank the state for stepping up and making that a reality. It has made a lot of difference. During our strategic planning process over the summer, late spring and summer, we just heard over and over again, a highly qualified teacher in the classroom was number one. That's what people wanted in this community more than anything else. And they have made that a reality, and it's really to be, to be commended for that. I also kind of laughed, when we've got this out. Texas had all the billboards up in Albuquerque. I don't know if you saw them, trying to entice our teachers over across the border the other way. And it might have made me mad, and then I realized that I was one of those teachers a few years ago. And but it is just so important that we stay out there. And as I said, what's really exciting isn't just the numbers. Well, that's really exciting. What's really exciting is the quality of the candidates. And we've seen some of our folks who left because the compensation package was not acceptable to being able to support yourself and a family, and they've now come back. And some of those folks are coming back with really good credentials, very good experiences, and we are just delighted to welcome them back to the state. Last comment I want to make, we will put this push for EAs. If we end up with additional teachers that we don't have slots for, then I know HR has talked to special services about maybe trading some teachers for EAs, so that we don't lose those folks. And one of the challenges we have with EAs, it's most of them are special ed. A couple are obviously health, but they're written into IEPs. And so there's our challenge. Those are legal documents, and we have to adhere to what's in there. And if we don't, we have to find other things that are quite expensive. So, if you know of anyone who would like to do this job, we would love to have them come our way. The other thing is, I hope as the board looks at resolutions, one of the resolutions I hope you will consider sending to the School Boards Association is improving the compensation package for educational assistants. They work with some of our most challenging kids. They support our teachers. They enable our teachers to be able to handle very difficult situations, and they deserve a better compensation package in the state. And I really hope that you might consider putting that on your priority to have the state look at improving overall compensation for our educational assistants. They deserve more. I think unless the state does that, we're all going to have problems. I hear from my colleagues across the state, everyone is struggling in getting educational assistance this year. And I think that's just an indicator that we need to look at that compensation package. But again, I just want to thank you for all of your hard work. It takes hours and hours from the time someone contacts us to the time they're on the job. And everybody has just really done a tremendous effort. I also want to thank Beth for the communications, the piece going out. People aren't just sitting around waiting to look at our website. and we know that. I mean, they're not just, and some people that we've talked to weren't even really thinking about doing this. And then they saw this information and they thought, maybe I would like to do this. I maybe thought about I might like to teach. My last comment is that our colleges of education haven't started this year. So we don't know yet if the numbers in the colleges are going to go up. We hope they will go up, but it'll take 4 to 5 years for those students to make their way through the system to be teachers. So here's the reality of it all. It's that we are going to be hiring most of our new staff for the next 4 to 5 years will be alternative. That's the way they're going to come to us. And so having the residency programs, intern programs are really the only way we're going to be able to keep our classrooms staffed. And they're really good programs. And while we really like those who've come through the traditional route of the College of Education, it's great. But many of these folks who come with other life experiences bring some really good things too. And I think over the years, we've had a lot of teachers who've come in alternative route, have ended up being really fine teachers for us and stayed with us a long time. And so there won't just be one path like there used to be. There's going to be lots of different ways to be able to get good people in our classrooms. Really, the comments are made many times, but I can't tell you how true it is. There is nothing that you can give a student in this district that is better than a highly qualified teacher. There's nothing else we can deliver that has more of an impact. And so keeping that in the front of our minds, all of the other groups support and help, and all of those are absolutely vital to our success. But that teacher is the one that's face-to-face with that student every day. And having really good teachers, which historically Rio Rancho's always had. It's really good to see this turning around. And again, Mike, thanks to you and your staff and everyone who worked on making this report a reality for today.
Thank you. I do have one last question.
Sure.
And I do want to echo that. I'm so grateful. I remember when Rio Rancho came in, Rio Rancho High School, and we had teachers from all over the country coming in. And so it's kind of fun to see all that. How are we on substitutes? I know last year we were really we didn't have a lot of substitutes for our classes. How is that looking this year so far?
So as you know, we moved to working with Kelly Services
That's great.
to provide substitutes, and they are having quite a bit of success finding substitutes. And so far this year, now we've only had a couple of days, but we do have, just a few vacancies, and we've had a few people out with COVID so far. And we've had no trouble, to my understanding, and I can start looking at those reports, but to my understanding, we've had no trouble filling empty classrooms at all with substitute teachers.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Mike, let me ask you a question too. This came up the other day. Our interns and and even our residents can substitute. Residents have to go through the same process. They have to sign on with Kelly. How do they do that?
So we're already in the process of working with the resident teachers to apply with Kelly Services to become substitutes. And for the most part, they'll be substituting for their mentor teachers in their classroom. The interns, of course, the whole point of their program is that they get the opportunity to work in different classrooms, different subjects, different areas of the school. And so they do take on different roles in the school. So they are essentially subbing in for a teacher who might be out, but that's kind of the point, because then by the end of the year, they have a much better feel for what they might be interested in teaching for the long run. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. You're welcome.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate the report.
Thank you very much.
It's always wonderful when it's a good report. Thank you. All right. Next, moving on to our consent agenda, to approving our consent agenda. Any questions on the consent from you?
This is Board Member Gary Tripp. I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Board Member Jeff Morgan, a second.
Okay, we have a motion by Gary Tripp and a second by Jeff Morgan. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries 4-0. Okay, moving into our business portion. So our first item of business is to consider the adoption of the 5-year facilities master plan. We have Michael Baker, our Chief Operations Officer, also Melanie Archibek, our Executive Director of Facilities, who will be presenting.
Good evening, Madam President Galbraith, members of the board, and Dr. Cleveland. So I believe that you guys received beforehand a very large document. This is a summary of that. So I just want to go over kind of the basic objective of the document first. The New Mexico state law requires all school districts to have a current plan. It's a prerequisite for eligibility for ND funding from PSFA or PSEOC. In addition, any construction projects requiring a building permit requires the PSFA director's approval. Approval is based on a number of factors to include its alignment with our plan. I want you to keep in mind that we can amend it as we kind of move forward in the years. If we need to add something, we can do that. We have done that in the past. The process is basically consisting of 4 questions that they're looking at. And so it's, where do we want to be? Where are we now? Where are we going? And how do we get there? Evaluations are based on data, space utilization, demographics, and physical space. As Dr. Cleveland had mentioned earlier, it doesn't necessarily account for unique programmatic or community perspectives. Part of this process, we did have a steering committee that consisted of 12 people. It was the district chiefs, improvement officers, executive directors, and community members. 2.6 million square feet were evaluated. We actually have a little over 2.7, 28 facilities. We did not evaluate the Student Support Center because we had just built that as fairly new. Transportation, and then of course CTE, because we were just acquiring the building at that time, on over 700 acres of property. So those are all of our building assets that they look at. So the first item that they look at is building permits, construction, residential permits. It gives us a good idea of our enrollment projections. And I think all of us have noticed that we kind of have an even display of construction everywhere. The main focus or growth really has been near Sandia Vista and Vista Grande, and that's due to just the multi-housing that's going up. There's just another little chart. Yes, please go to the next one. That shows you a little bit over the years. I'll let you take a look at that. And then the next slide, please. That actually shows per elementary school the new growth percentage. So again, you'll see that Sandia Vista and Vista Grande are shooting up over 20% in growth in what we've seen. In addition to that, we look at birth rates. What they're finding, the data is finding is that those of childbearing age are not having as many children, or if any children. And so we're really seeing a difference in when we look at one house per permit, we're not getting the number of children that we would usually use for projections. The next slide shows a little bit of the population by age group that we're seeing here in our area. The next 2 slides do. Something to look at. And then let's move to the next slide, which is enrollment projections. There are a few lines here that are going to show you the elementary, middle school, and high school. What you're seeing looking at these charts is there isn't a lot of change from what we're seeing now in the next 5 to 10 years. We went ahead and broke it down by elementary schools. So you'll see similar charts as we go through, and then let's go to the next chart. So again, you're not seeing too much of a shift in enrollment. Next, please. Next. Next. All right. This one here, I want to discuss a little bit more. So it's showing the capacity of the building itself versus the 5-year projection and the 10-year projection. So the first bar that you're seeing across all of these is going to be the functional capacity with including our portables. The second bar is without our portables, and then of course the 5 and 10-year projections. Shining Stars is a little unique here because we do have a long waiting list. And we're just kind of capped at the square footage that we currently have and are able to serve with the requirements that the state has. But if you look across here at the elementaries that are shown, you can see that the building itself is able to hold projections that we have for the next 10 years. The next slide will show you the same thing, very similar items for the elementaries. Same thing at the elementaries. Then we come to the middle schools. You can see pretty level as well. If you go to the next slide, where you will see a difference with this is that Mountain View. So the 5 and 10-year projection is showing that our current facility cannot sustain those enrollments, but the rest of the middle schools can. The next slide will show the high school. And this is where we are seeing a lot of growth as well. So right here, if we can go to the next slide, I think it's easier to see. Rio Rancho High School, it's showing that our facilities are able to hold the projections of the enrollments, but Cleveland is showing growth. So it's kind of either way with both of those. Independence High School, you can see that our projections and with the wait list that our current facilities are not able to kind of meet the needs for that. You get the same thing with the Cyber Academy blended classes with the wait list. So another thing to keep in mind is the facility condition scores. And so this right here is kind of the ratings that came out of all of kind of the data. And there was a large group, ARC conducted this for us. They had a large group visiting every one of our sites, opening every single door, looking at everything and assessing things. They also met with a number of staff and then the steering committee and developed all of this. So what you can see here is, of course, Shining Stars Preschool, Joe Harris, our newest facilities, are looking pretty good in the 90th percentiles. I believe MLK and Puesta del Sol, when they did the evaluations, we were in construction, so I don't think you're seeing kind of today's numbers on that. But you'll see Rio Rancho Elementary is an older school. It's definitely in the 70%. But this kind of shows our levels of where we're at with the elementary, middle school. Same sort of thing. We've got Eagle Ridge in the 70th percentile and the remaining ones in the 80th. I don't know if you can see that, but the top line in blue is the site. So that's the individual site condition. The actual plant, the building itself, is the orange line, and the gray is the adequacy and the combined score. So I'm looking at the combined scores, which is the bottom. The high school and alternative schools, desert programs, is borderline. That one's very low, definitely needs some attention. Independence is also looking low. You can see that, and its adequacy, that it's below all the other lines. And then everything else is kind of in the 80th and 90th percentiles. Then we start to talk about the needs. After all the evaluations are done and they're sitting down, ARC, their team is sitting down with the committee, we have to come up with recommendations and what we as a district have determined as priorities. And so what you're seeing there are the top priorities that the committee determined. And so it was safety and security, drainage improvements, roof replacements, ADA and restroom renovations, energy saving projects. We want to bring money back into the district so that we can extend it on further projects. And then of course the CTE development. With all of that, prioritizing that, you see a list, and this is the number that Mr. Baker mentioned earlier. It's 378, a little bit over that, million of needs within the district. And so you can kind of see the chart going down. Rio Rancho High School is requiring the most. Part of that is because it is an older school and the magnitude, the size of that school. But you can see the needs based on every school identified by the plan. The next sheet kind of shows you that the majority of that is the facility renewal. So that is something that I'll get into a little bit deeper, but that is what I do quite a bit of. So funding. SB 9 and our bonds, of course, we really rely on the voters to support us, and we've been very grateful for that. PSFA and PSCOC is award-based, and so this is document as a requirement in order to get any of the awards. There are very specific requirements about both of those funding sources, and I'll kind of talk about it as we go into a few other slides. And then capital outlay or direct appropriations is what we usually request through the legislative session, and it's been very helpful for us. The next sheet shows the Psfa scores, and so when I'm talking about PSFA awards, they typically, we don't have a lot of funding within the state, and they'll try and fund the top 100 scored buildings. Because our facilities are newer than a lot of them in the state, we actually score fairly high, and rarely qualify for any funding because we are scoring much better than other schools within the state. And that's just the reality. All of our buildings are actually after 300, right? We're in the 300 range. So we're far from getting funding from that. One of the funding streams that I mentioned before is PSEOC. And so that one has very specific systems. So I believe in previous years, we did the gunshot system within that. So it's systems, HVAC systems, but it also looks at the scoring from PSFA, and it's whether we can qualify to actually go after the particular funds. Any funding that we get through PSFA or PSCOC has what is called an offset. And so what you're seeing there is our current offset, which is over 1.3, and our pending one, which right now I think contracts are being signed for 1.6. So we're approximately 3 million. The offset comes from any money that we accept from capital outlay. So any funds that they give us is actually kind of a debt if we receive an award. But we've been very fortunate, and that's kind of been our best source of money in terms of awards. And then there is a share. So the district is responsible for any awards that we get through PSFA, PSCOC. We pay 65% after the offset. Does that make sense? Okay. The next slide is the bond, and we actually had a fantastic presentation, so I can hone in on this a little bit better. So the 2019 bond, we were authorized 60 million. We're well on our way of completing all our projects and spending that off. Our next one is in 23, and I believe I heard that we are looking to maybe our bond capacity at 70 million. So that's what we had in mind as the committee provided recommendations for the 23 bond, which is on the next slide. This is only 50% of our top priorities, 1 and 2. So we're barely scratching a surface on the needs within the district. In summary, our average score as a district across all of our assets is a B- at 81.59. We went down slightly from our last 5-year master plan, which was 82.9. The recommended annual maintenance budget in order to really keep up with our needs is over 10 million. I want to talk a little bit about this because there's deferred maintenance. Right now, if you look, we have our fiscal year 22, last year's, I had 3.2 million to actually take care of all our needs, which is a deficit of 7.1. So I'm not able to do everything. And because of that, it's deferred maintenance. So it will continue to degrade, and then usually the adjacent systems next to it will also degrade. So it just becomes more expensive over time. But this is really highlighting, if you remember that pie chart, the largest deficit that we have, and that is through SB 9 funds. So if anyone, we appreciate the support. The total budget for all the projects, as mentioned, was 378 million. And then one of the items in there is enrollment increases can be dealt with or should be considered through boundary changes versus building new schools. Again, this document looks at data utilization and physical spaces, not necessarily programmatic or community needs. I now stand for questions. Yes. Try to summarize a very large
It
document.
was good. When I read through the big document, and I think it changed a little bit from the first one that we had, but I actually really enjoyed it. It was really interesting to see all the changes and the projections. I thought it was really, really interesting. But this was much easier to go through. So thank you for summarizing. So we'll go to questions first, and then we'll go to Dr. Cleveland after we go through questions. Gary Tripp.
So, great report. Have about 3 or 4 questions. One is slide 13, the enrollment projections. And I kind of see kind of a flatness to enrollment growth, and I'm just saying that's in my head after listening, Melanie. But it was just a few years back that we had a report that rural New Mexico is really going to go away as far as really big decreases in enrollment. And who's going to have the increase in enrollment is Rio Rancho, Farmington, Roswell, Hobbs, Carlsbad, those communities. So I'm wondering on slide 13, was any projections as far as growth about how people are going to shift in movement? Was that played into the projections?
I'm going to bring the actual individuals that did this.
Yeah.
So we have,
And please approach the
I'm
microphone when
concerned
you do
about seeing
that.
a flat rate, and I think we need more. We're going to need more schools in the future. So
we have Aline
Just a pick.
O'Byrne with ARC. Did I say that? Yes.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Lean O'Byrne. I was a project manager and the director of educational services for ARC. And we actually, can I say, do business with about 75% of the school districts in the state. So yes, we do look at the other school districts and especially the rural ones. You guys, actually, we did predict, if you look, there's a slight increase, but it's not a big increase. And part of that really goes back to people aren't having children. And the growth in Rio Rancho is older people. You're getting people 55 and older moving into your town. And they don't have children anymore. They're gone.
What did you see with the projection of Intel adding $3 billion to the plant and potentially a substantial number of employees?
Yeah,
How did that fit into your projections?
That did fit in. We actually call and talk to Intel. And again, we saw mild increases, but not major increases. People just aren't having children. And it's a nationwide problem. It is not just a New Mexico problem. It's a nationwide, and it's become a problem.
Thank you.
yeah, Melanie, slide 31. If I can go back, maybe I'll get my question on the allocations per each school site. The 378, 728, 123. CTE is not in there, but you do account for it down at the end of the report. Or did I miss the CTE building?
So we did not evaluate CTE because we had just purchased it at the time. We did put it as a bond priority, but this was kind of assessing the needs of our existing facilities. Again, we didn't look at the Student Support Center, transportation, or CTE.
Okay, great.
I believe, just for clarification, that those weren't scored for the state purposes, but it is included here on this slide. CTE is on there for 20 million.
So
those numbers were included for the total amount of projects we want to do, but those buildings weren't scored necessarily for the state purposes of, correct?
Correct.
So the last question I have is, at the end of the report, when we have all this pots that we pull money from, do you think at some point, and maybe it's more on Mike Baker, not you, but I know that when you get from one pot, you don't get enough from another pot, from the state of New Mexico. So if you use bond money, does that deviate from other pots that's out there to get with PSFA and different places? I know I didn't write on my notes where the pot of monies come from, but
No, so it's on slide 34 is where I kind of talk about the different funding sources. We have had projects where we use multiple funding sources.
yeah, okay.
You were worried that it could hurt us, our bonds could hurt us as far as getting other funding? Is that what you're?
Well, if you get, capital outlay money, or if you get legislative money, does that take away from other pots that you have in? So it's like,
Yeah.
you hate to say
The
this, but you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
A little bit. Your bond money is your bond money, okay? Right. And your bond money goes to that 65% buy-in of any project that the PSCOC could allocate. What happens is when you get direct legislative allotments that don't go through the PSCOC, those count against you.
So
That's
that offset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But those are the only ones that count against you.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Jeff Morgan.
Can we go to slide 35 and can you explain that to me again, please? Okay, right there.
Yes, so this is actually the Psfa score, and this is what they look at when they're talking about providing awards. Typically, there's not enough funding and they're awarding projects rated 100 and above. We don't have anything rated in 100 and above.
However, you have 5 schools rated 300 and above, which means you could get some funding for systems like a roof or a parking lot after you take care of that offset. That's the catch-22.
What do you mean by an offset?
So the offset is any funding that we've received from direct appropriations. So, we just went out to legislative, we got awarded 1.6, which is fantastic. But if we get any state funds through PSFA or PSCOC, we have to pay that off first. The easiest way I can explain it is that it's our debt. We pay that off first before we can actually get an awarded amount.
Does that help? Dr. Cleveland, do you want to add anything on that one?
Just one quick comment and then go back to the other board members because I have a couple of others. But there is a conversation right now about eliminating offset and match. And there are 4 districts that are asked to present on September 20th on that issue, and I am one of them. Scott Elder will also from APS, Travis Lightfoot, and who was the other one? Kim Mizell from Bloomfield, and we'll be speaking on the Senate chambers to this issue. One of the challenges right now is they have a huge amount of money that is sitting there, a significant amount of money. And don't quote me on this, but I think it's like about 750 million, something like that. And the districts can't access this money because of offset and match. And they want districts to be able to use that money. So who knows which way it's going to go, but we're going to make our pitch. Then the month after that will be, they will be talking about the match. And both of those have really shut down a lot of the construction in the state of New Mexico. It has been very hurtful. Their intent was honorable. I mean, they were trying to keep districts who had more powerful legislators from dominating the funding process and some other things. So the intent was very honorable. It was not to hurt school districts, but the end result has done just that. So we at least have an opportunity in a month to make our case, and we certainly are going to go and suggest that they rethink offsets and certainly matches in a time when we need some things that even are not traditionally often considered, like early childhood facilities and some other things. So. But I have a couple of other comments, but if the rest of the board still wants to comment.
Okay. Yeah, we'll go to questions real quick. Mike Baker, did you want to add something real quick before I go to?
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's still a little confusion on the offset.
Yes.
I have an example.
Okay.
Practical example. So Melanie said that our offset, let's just say it's approximately $3 million. Okay. And so we have a project here, CTE. Now, it's possible that we could apply for funding through the state in order to get some money for the renovation because it's going to decrease the capacity at Cleveland High School, for example. So let's say we were to put in for that funding and we say to the state, we are requesting $5 million. The state would say, great, we'll give you $5 million, but we're going to subtract the $3 million. Therefore, we would only get $2 million. So we don't really owe per se. It's not like your personal debt that you actually have to physically pay this, but that's how you would pay it back by receiving an award of $5 million, but actually only getting $2 million. Does that make sense?
So you still have to have 2 million in order to get the 5 million accomplished, or what?
Well, what you have to do if you're going to do the project, in order to get the 2 million, you have to come up with the 3 million.
Yeah.
And so, as Dr. Cleveland indicated, a lot of districts are like, well, we can't come up with the 3 million.
And that's plus your percentage that we have to pay. So that's in addition to the 65% that we have to pay.
And also, it's not necessarily for the same, it's not going to be even for the same project. So say we were given capital improvement funds for CTE and we were trying to get PSFA money for the roofs at 5 other schools, that money for CTE would still count against us. So the way I try to think of it is if you went to get a home loan for renovations at your house, but your insurance company paid for your roof, $20,000, and you were asking for a home loan for reservations for other renovations for $100,000, it's basically the state saying, well, you're getting money from somewhere else. We're only going to give you 80 because you're getting 20 from somewhere else, even though the projects aren't related. I could make sense of it. Is that accurate or somewhat accurate?
Okay. Okay. Let's go over to Jessica Tyler for questions.
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just have a quick question. Has there ever been board members on this facilities master plan committee before? And why is that not happening now?
Other districts do put a board member on. Of course, you have to be careful not to get a quorum because it's not supposed to be a board thing. But it's up to the district who is on the steering committee. So it's whoever you guys give me.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So it's not uncommon for that to happen.
Yeah, I was aware of that in other communities, so I wondered why we didn't do it.
We did bring community members on. We invited them. Unfortunately, they didn't attend all
No,
of
she's
them.
talking about a board.
No, I know,
Yeah,
but
okay.
we did bring community members, but we did not. Yeah, I just, we didn't consider it. We provided a list and got approval.
All right. Thank you. And then Dr. Cleveland, do you want to add some?
Well, just a couple of comments. I think we're always looking to improve our processes, and so we definitely can look at that. I think maybe even a better understanding of the role of the committee, because I think sometimes the committee didn't always feel their voices were heard, and so how do we work that? So people really understand what the role of the committee really is. The second. I just have a question about the waiting lists. When we have situations in buildings where we have significant waiting lists, is that looked at? And is that built into this process? For example, we have almost as many children on the waiting list for early childhood center than we have room, but we can't get money. It goes back to this issue. We can't get money. We don't have the match. And we can't afford it. You can't deal with an offset. So we have one of the largest percentages of children not served in early childhood because of the lack of facility space. And so that's one. But we also have, for example, Independence High School. We have a large number of students every year that are turned away. Many of them become dropouts because they cannot get into the alternative program, and we lose those students. We have pretty good graduation rate in Rio Rancho, 89%. So we're always still working on that. But how do waiting lists feed into this overall planning when we have needs that we can't meet any way we look at it? We just can't find the resources for it.
So I think they accounted for it, the wait list on Cyber and Independence. We did not have it on Shining Stars, but you are correct. We have nearly double the amount of wait lists on that.
Okay. Yeah. And the same for Independence? Would it work the same way?
Independence, it has it on that chart as well.
Okay, thank you. All right. Thanks.
Okay. Anything else?
Because there's space we need.
Mm-hmm.
And what you find in a lot of other districts across the state is they have vacant schools. They have vacant classrooms. They're in declining enrollment. So they can find spaces for some of these specialized programs. And we are not in that situation. And we don't have a lot of empty spaces. So trying to meet those needs, and those are programs that the state is wanting us to do. We've had some very good conversations with LFC about their desire to see us double our early childhood enrollment. We just simply can't do it because we don't have the facilities to do it with. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Go ahead.
Melanie, I have one more question. It kind of bothered me, so I counted it. So 5 out of 15 of the projects, the problem is draining system issues. And is that something that the engineers or the architects, whoever designed, didn't have I mean, teachers get upset at students but drainage is 1/3 of our problem. And that's a lot of money that's going to be spent in the future that's outside the classroom. And
So I wasn't here when the schools were
right.
built.
No, I know. I just get
A
your
lot
opinion.
of times, and I hate to say this, the term value engineering, I think, happens and it's cut. I think that probably happened here. We have a lot of major erosion issues. It's definitely impacting our larger assets, and so it does need to be addressed.
Thank you.
Anything else from the board? Any other questions?
Could I just add one thing? There's that old biblical prohibition about building your house on, not building on the sand. And all of Rio Rancho is built on sand. So it kind of worries me sometime about that. But I can think of it, and certainly Mr. Leppelman remembers because he was the principal at Enchanted Hills at the time. And Jeanette was there at the time. And Joyner Construction would come with great regularity and take the dirt and shove it back under the foundation to keep it from cracking and falling apart. It is a huge issue for us in this community in dealing with the sand, because that's what we have. We're built on sand hills, and and after a rain, we see it every rain. The sand is all over everywhere, and you can see it all over Rio Rancho. But it does have a huge impact, and it impacts our buildings. And it's really a struggle when we actually need to be repairing schools in other ways, or building buildings, or doing other things, or doing like the CTE campus. But it has to be done. I mean, the buildings won't last if we don't get that work. But thanks to the joiners for, coming out with great, as I said, regularity and taking their equipment and shoving the dirt back under Enchanted Hills Elementary. So it is a challenge.
Well, and I think with that too, I notice in Rio Rancho, a lot of times we have drainage plans, homes have drainage plans, all those things, and then we don't follow them, and they start to fill the dirt into their drainage ponds and everything like that. So, and then it causes everyone a problem. So hopefully, as we do make these different plans and work through that, we keep those and make sure that our future, those who come in, that we keep those drainage plans going. So, anything else from the board as far as this goes? Dr. Cleveland, do you recommend approval on this facilities plan? Okay. So if we have a motion.
Board Member Tyler, I'd like to make a motion.
There's some concerns, but yes.
Okay. This is Board Member Tyler. I'd like to make a motion to adopt the 5-year facilities master plan as presented.
Board Member Gary Tripp, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Jessica Tyler and a second by Gary Tripp. And if you could take a roll call vote for us on this one, Kim.
Vice President Morgan,
Yes.
Secretary Scott,
No.
Member Tripp,
Yes.
Board Member Tyler,
Yes.
and President Galbraith.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-1.
Thank you. Okay. For our next item of business will be to consider the approval of a memorandum of understanding between the Boys and Girls Club of Central New Mexico and Rio Rancho Public Schools. And Renee Saucedo, our secondary school improvement officer, will present.
Madam President Galbraith, Dr. Cleveland, members of the board, I'm happy to be here to ask you to approve our memorandum of understanding for the Boys and Girls Club of Central New Mexico with the Rio Rancho Public Schools to provide an after-school program for 3 of our 4 middle schools. It will be free to parents. The Boys and Girls Club have gone out and they've gotten a $150,000 grant to work toward making this happen. Basically, the memorandum defines the roles and responsibilities for both parties. The Boys and Girls Club will be hiring all of their staff. They'll have tutoring programs. They're the ones who will be designing the program, the after-school program. and they'll have general oversight. Rio Rancho Public Schools will provide the buildings, the kids, other support, snacks, and supplies, and then we'll evaluate the programs together. So I think Dr. Cleveland also did a very nice job in the introduction describing the programs. So I would ask that you approve this memorandum.
This is Secretary Noreen Scott. I move that we approve the memorandum of understanding.
Board Member Gary Tripp, second.
Motion by Noreen Scott, a second by Gary Tripp. Are there any questions before we go into a vote on this? Anyone wants?
I don't have a question, but I just wanted to comment. In my previous career working with youth for school resource officer programs and looking for alternative programs to provide kids, one of the biggest obstacles was always providing transportation for the kids to other places. And so I think this partnership is a beautiful design that the Boys and Girls Club is willing to take their programs to our schools because it alleviates the necessity to transport our students. And so I just think it's a great service that we can provide our community and our students. So I commend you guys for recognizing that opportunity and moving forward with this grant funding. And so I think this is a great thing for our kids and look forward to being able to take it to the 4th middle school next year. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions before we go to vote?
We good?
Okay. Kim, you want to do a roll call vote for us?
Vice President Morgan,
Yes.
Secretary Scott,
Yes.
Board Member Tripp,
Yes.
Board Member Tyler,
Yes.
President Galbraith.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So much. Okay, moving into our advanced planning. And Dr. Cleveland, do you have anything that you wanted to add to that before we move to that?
No, but I did want to add just thanks to Renee. She spent an awful lot of time making this work, and there were lots of revisions and lots of things that went into it. So I just wanted to thank you for the effort you spent on it.
Thank you. Thank you, Renee. Okay, so as far as advanced planning, we have an audit committee meeting on August 22nd. That'll be 4:30 in the training center. Also on August 22nd, there'll be a regular board meeting at 5:30. As a note to that, you'll see September 12th is the deadline for the submission for the 2023 legislative resolutions to the New Mexico School Boards Association. And so for our new board members, we haven't done resolutions since anyone's been on, but they call for resolutions from all of the districts. We usually have, I think Kim and Beth usually draft those resolutions for us, which we really appreciate. So it's those, we talked a little bit about that earlier, about some things that we could put as far as our resolutions. And so they ask for those from all the districts, and then they they receive all those resolutions. I believe, Gary, are you sitting on that committee, right? He's going to be sitting on that committee where they'll have all those resolutions from the districts, and then they will pick out of those resolutions what they're going to send actually up to Santa Fe. So with that, I just want to make sure that everyone starts really thinking about that, and we're going to have it on our next board meeting. So that board meeting on the 22nd, we'll talk about what we want to have on those resolutions. So just kind of start getting your mind working on those and what we want to send up to the New Mexico School Board Association. Any questions on that? Okay, good. Okay, and then so September 2nd, we'll have, that will be a half day of classes. It will be a staff professional development and planning day. Sorry, we have never had that on there before. It took me a second to read through it. September 5th, Labor Day holiday. September 12th, as I said, the deadline for the submission. Also on the 12th will be a board meeting at 5:30. And then the 26th will be audit committee at 4:30. And on the 26th, a regular board meeting. Anything on advanced planning that we missed, or all the times look good there? Okay. So with that, we'll move to executive session. So we'll consider a motion to convene in executive session for the purpose of discussing the purchase, acquisition, or disposal of real property or water rights by the public body, specifically for the superintendent to inform the board about potential property transactions as permitted under Section 10-15-1H8 of the New Mexico Open Meetings Act.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, we have all in favor.
I think this requires a
I think I do that every time.
yeah, this requires a roll
you.
call.
Okay, can you do a roll call vote for us?
Yeah,
Thank you. I think I do that every time.
Yeah. Vice President Morgan,
Yes.
Secretary Scott,
Yes.
Board Member Tripp,
Yes.
Board Member Tyler,
Yes.
President Galbraith.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. And Kim, did you get who had the motion on that one in the second in your notes?
I did.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you. So we'll move into executive.
They have a 5-minute break.
Yes. Everyone wants to take 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Okay.